predicting what's next in our industry. My name is Jessica Smith, and I am the Director of Global Events at MCI USA, and I serve on the PCMA Capital chapter as a professional director. So before we get started, I want to tell you all about some exciting chapter updates. First of all, though, general housekeeping notes. Please keep your mic muted unless you have been called on to speak. But we do want to hear from you, so please be sure to share comments, resources, links, all in the chat box. And if you agree with someone's comments, please use those reaction tools. There's a couple of new ones now with Zoom. As well as, do you want to speak up? Raise your hand. To do that, click on the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your screen. And at the bottom of that window in the right-hand corner, click on the raise hand button. So we can't start our final Lunch and Learn of the year without first saying a huge thank you to all of our PCMA Capital chapter members. It has been quite a year, and we really appreciate your creativity, engagement, support, and participation. From 3 successful half-day Spark events to 10 of these virtual Lunch and Learns, to more social media engagement than ever before, to over 6 community service projects, to a new diversity and inclusion task force, whoop whoop, to advocacy and voting campaigns, to new and creative sponsorship partnerships, and to so much more. We have you all to thank for the most difficult time of the year being a little bit easier. So thank you all for one heck of a year. Now, as all we know, our industry has been hit pretty hard. And we want to make sure that if you've been furloughed or laid off, that we've stayed connected to you. So please reach out to our past president, Vicki Johnson, to update your contact information so that we can ensure that you receive communications, announcements, event updates, and all of our networking opportunities with the chapter. Additionally, if you've lost your job as a result of the pandemic, PCMA is here for you. So when it's your time to review, take advantage of our hardship dues of $50, yes, $50, by emailing membership@pcma.org. So let's round out the end of the year with some fun. New event happening next Monday is a new virtual monthly trivia night called Mixing Quiz, and it does start next Monday. So this will be a fun, casual way to network with our peers and relieve a little bit of stress. We do have registration open now, and you can register either as an individual or you can register as a team. If you register as an individual, we'll put you onto a team. So please sign up today. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, as we prepare for 2021, it is the perfect time to sign up to get involved in the chapter on a committee. So from planning chapter programming to communicating to members through the chatter newsletter and social media to working on our community service projects, there's really something for everyone, even if your time commitment is really small. So learn more on our website, or feel free to reach out to a Capital chapter leader, including myself, to discuss further, because we'd really love to get everyone involved, especially in this virtual world, in the Capital chapter. So speaking of staying involved, who is ready for Convening Leaders? Yes, Convening Leaders is right around the corner, January 11th through 15th, and the rate is only $295 per PCMA members, both planners and suppliers. So please learn more by registering at conveningleaders.org. Also, our Capital chapter reception will be on Tuesday, January 12th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Additional information is coming, so be on the lookout for that. And finally, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the sponsors of today's event, Choose Chicago and Visit Norfolk. Thank you to these partners for their help in supporting the Capital Chapter's Lunch and Learn program and keeping these presentations free to members. Also, we'd like to thank Visit Charlotte for donating the prizes for today's trivia break. Exciting. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Brad Weber. Brad is a veteran to the meetings industry with over 30 years of meeting, events, and hospitality industry management roles. He is the founder and principal of Brad Weber Consulting Group, a firm focused on professional board and panel facilitation, as well as management efficiencies and event strategy review for all market segments. Brad is a past president of the PCMA Capital chapter, So it is my pleasure to welcome Brad to our Lunch and Learn.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are you? So good to see you. John, I have to tell you, you have an amazing committee. I have done more of these than I can even count, and the professionalism and the fun that we've had preparing for this has been great. So congratulations to this committee, and it's so great to see all of you. You know, it's pretty surreal. Here we are in the holiday season. I remember in March saying, "Oh, we'll be through this by Memorial Day," and then, "Oh, we'll be done by 4th of July," and we won't go to Halloween, and here we are. And you know what? There's nothing more resilient than this industry. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to have a lot of conversation related to what we see and where we're going. And this is very much going to be a participatory sport. So I would love for everyone to use the chat box, put your hand up, wave at me, whatever. If you want to jump on and start talking and give some tips and tricks, we'll certainly do that. So let's flash back a little bit. So we're talking about Back to the Future. And I think one of the things that we need to really do as an industry now is to really change some verbs and some words. And one of the questions that we threw out to all of you was, what are some words that you would like to have removed from vocabulary moving forward? And let's just say, to no shock, the word pivot should be abolished, and was brought up by 92% of this group. So I think that is definitely one. And by the way, if I say that word, the P word, during the next hour, call me out. Whoever's first, I will send you a Amazon gift card for $100. So hold me to it, okay? So that word, and then unprecedented. And then there's a political word that I'm just going to go ahead and avoid, but the T word came up a few times. And, it's one of the things that I also love seeing was several comments about the word normal, new normal. And it's funny, I was reading all of the words and I thought, who gives us, what is normal? Like, who gives any of us the right to say what normal is? What is normal? What's new normal? So I think that's also a great one to rethink, recalibrate around. And I'd like to leave you with this before we start talking about the silver lining. Is someone said, the other day on a meeting I was in, like, we're going to bounce back. And I said, I hope we don't bounce back. I hope we bounce forward. Now, because we're going to have to keep moving forward. And I like to use the analogy that, there's a reason why the windshield of a car is much larger than the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is so you can check back, but the windshield is about looking forward. So let's keep looking through that big windshield and keep recalibrating as we move forward. But one question I also wanted to have asked was, what are the silver linings that you all have seen in the year 2020? Now, you might think that's kind of a crazy question. And it actually isn't, because I think that it has given us all an opportunity to reflect and to really introspectively look at our industry, our families, ourselves. So one of the big comments that came out during the survey, which I'm happy to see, is that people said that they are not going to take their health for granted any longer, that health is critical, and that they're thankful, and the silver lining is that they're healthy. And speaking from experience, my husband and I were standing on December 31st, clinking our champagne glasses at the stroke of midnight to the best year ever. Now, maybe it's our fault. Maybe we hit those glasses, get our lightning bolt hit, but anyway, 3 months later, I was standing on stage, and March 6th in Las Vegas. And then 2 weeks later, I was flat out for 32 days with COVID. And someone said to me the other day, how could you possibly have a silver lining after having been so sick, watched your business evaporate? And honestly, the silver lining for me is I had a lot of time to reflect, but also had I not gotten COVID, I would not have found out that I had cancer. And because of COVID, a lot of my hair fell out. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I finally thought, you know what? You can do a lot of things to me, but you can't take my hair. So I went to dermatologist and I found out that I had melanoma. I would have never had that checked. And a week later, I was in surgery and they were able to get it and take care of it. And I asked the doctor if I had waited another year after COVID was hopefully over, what would have happened? And he said, you would probably not be hanging out much longer. So, two things I want to say about that is you may think or you may look that this is, the worst, and it is bad. It is horrible. We have seen so much tragedy. We have seen so much happen, but always I ask to look and you will find something in there that is a silver lining. And I actually want to comment on a couple things. I'm going to read them directly. And I think these are amazing. One person said that the silver lining is, as an association with members very reluctant to change, it has forced everyone to adopt new technologies quickly. It would have been at least 5 or more years before our members would have even entertained the idea of a virtual meeting, and now we've done it multiple times. And there are actually several comments in here about virtual meeting, and we're going to have a conversation about that towards later in this meeting about virtual meetings, what you all have experienced in hybrid meetings and your tips and tricks, and where you think this is all going. The other one is someone wrote personally, it said, I don't think there's just one, I think there's many. But if I had to choose one, I would say the ability to let go, that I can't control everything, or in 2020, much of anything. And that's really okay. It will all work out in the end. Controlling everything doesn't always ensure the best outcome, that good things come from letting things happen as they're meant to happen. I think that's a very poignant comment. And I think it's one that a lot of people have had to sit back and reflect. I mean, it's crazy. I can't believe, we're sitting here right now staring at each other on a screen when we would normally be running around the ballroom right now, very loud, hugging, probably the glass of wine in our hand and having a great time. But I have seen through social media and through a lot of these virtual meetings, some of the most grace and kindness. And I've seen organizations that used to compete are now co-opetition. I've seen cities have come together in ways that I've never seen cities come together to share and to give information to each other to help all of this industry rebuild. Look, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what, and I've been doing this for a long time, this industry will always be in the front and center. I don't like to use the term crosshair, but the front and center of every issue on this planet, whether it has to do with ecological, climate, political, social issues. And I think, again, if you have the strength to be able to stay with it, the creativity and what happens is who we are. And we're going to be fine. And we're going to make it through this. It's not going to be easy anytime soon. But there is such a big bright light out there right now with the vaccine. Cannot wait, hopefully someday, to be sitting there getting in the arm. But here we are. This is going to bring us back. And I will say that there is probably more opportunity, I think, for all of us and in this industry, with the pent-up demand for face-to-face, with the pent-up demand for travel than we've ever experienced in any of our careers. So I'm a very much of a silver lining, half full kind of guy. Last thing I'd like to mention here too is, someone else wrote, I've been able to slow down a bit and realign my goals to better and advance myself and my career without the hustle and bustle of being in an airport all the time. I found that very poignant and very interesting. And I was supposed to be on 37 airplanes this year, and I was on 2. And no more, coming until probably in February or shortly thereafter. The reflective time, and I get so excited when I get on LinkedIn or Facebook and I see that another one of you have gotten your certifications in the digital experience. And I'd like show of hands how many people have gotten it, doing it, wanting to do it. I mean, it's a whole nother term and word. Yeah, there's so many people doing this, and it's incredible that this is where we are, and this is what we're going to be doing in the future, and not changing anytime soon. And then lastly, someone wrote, my family. Question stated is, I didn't realize how important my family was until I had time to actually spend with them, and the things I've taken for granted. So as we're here in the holiday season, which is normally the time we take a little bit of a breath and spend time with family, we've had that reflective time going on for some time. So there is a lot of grace out there. I have established relationships and friendships with people that I have not had a chance to sit down and talk to. Even though this is a little flat, it's still been wonderful to have that time to have those conversations. Also, the outreach that I see on helping each other, I want to congratulate this chapter, particularly Vicki Johnson, on the work of trying to help people find work, to be open about this. Somebody said to me recently, I get probably 2 or 3 calls a week. One asking me if I'm hiring, and I'm not. I'm just me these days. And but if I hear of anything, and someone said to me recently, which kind of broke my heart, they said, should I show on my resume, or should I show on LinkedIn that I no longer have a job? And I said, of course. I said, well, the last thing you want is not to be transparent about this. And I said, look, this is the most forgiving time, for any employer in any industry, is this time. And no one's ever going to look and say, oh, you didn't, you don't have a job right now, when the hiring starts back up. So my recommendation is to be very transparent about that, and to certainly not shy away from using your network, and to attending events and things like this. So I'd like to ask you all a question. If you were talking about going back to the future, well, I think if we knew truly what the future is, we'd be all in different jobs, because we'd be, with our crystal balls doing a lot of things, probably in the stock market. So I want to ask you, I want you to go into the chat box, if you can. I'd like to get from you what you believe the next biggest, hottest trend will be for our industry moving forward. And then I'm going to also ask that we do a quick poll on virtual meetings. I'd like for you to tell what you're doing. So if you go ahead and put the poll up, if you could all take this, please. Also, I'm intrigued to also, if you could throw this out in the chat, is, how your answer may have changed since we have found out about the vaccines. Let's keep it open for a little bit longer. All right, so based on what I'm seeing here, hybrid events obviously are the dominant. Nice to see that there, at least are going to be events. The no events was definitely a concern, obviously, from last year. I mean, or the rest earlier this year. virtual event only. That seems to be trending with everyone I talk to and all the different groups across market segments. I'm also on the live event only. For those that answered that one, I'd be curious to see in the chat box, or if you'd like to talk about it, what you're seeing in regards to timing of the live event only. Okay, thanks, Marcus. Yeah. Oh, Lauren. So Lauren, do you mind hopping on and chatting about that for a second, Lauren Chow?
Hi. Hope everyone's doing well. Love seeing all your faces. Like a lot of you, for March, we're doing virtual. And for August, we're planning on face-to-face for now. Hybrid, unfortunately, is not an option for us due to the costs associated with it. But we're hoping with the vaccine. Our issue though is we have about 1/3 of our attendees are international, so we have to wait and see the vaccination in Europe and China.
Thank you. Anyone else that are doing a live event this year or next year like to speak about it? Dee Clemens, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Hi, everybody. We're doing 2 live events in April of 2021, both in Florida. So we're hoping to go off without a hitch. Obviously, very happy to see the vaccine being administered. Health and well-being of attendees are very important, but we are doing 2 live events. Combination wasn't a choice of the answers, but a lot of us are doing a combination of events. In first quarter, they're going to be hybrid, and then full live as we move forward in the second and third quarters of the year.
Thank you. So in the last probably 6 months, I've had the privilege of working with several organizations, several CVBs and DMOs on their customer advisory boards virtually. We've had 1 hybrid. So I've had a chance now to speak with maybe over 120 some event producers. And this is pre-vaccine information. 2021 definitely was going to be late quarter three or quarter 4 before even attempting to do live events. A lot of the organizations were looking at following science directly, particularly in the medical field. A lot of challenges on whether or not able to do any kind of live events anytime soon, primarily because the workers are on the front line. And the workers are on the front line now more than ever as far as administration of the vaccine and that type of thing. So there's a lot going on in regards to the timing and that type of thing. But let's take a shift over in conversation now and talk a bit about the virtual and hybrid events. Lauren Shelf, you mentioned about the cost, and I'd like to, if you're comfortable, how many other people have chosen to not, how many other people have chosen not to do any kind of virtual or hybrid event, primarily due to the cost factor. All right, so not too many. So I was reading an article this morning that talks about how there is really an unbelievable change that is happening to the dynamics of virtual and hybrid meetings. So algorithms have been done related to how long people will actually stay online or stay attuned to something. And they're now showing that 88% of attendees are moving away. They'll start an event and then they'll drop off. Meaning like a day and a half event, they only handle a couple hours, that type of thing. But the question I thought was interesting is why do we binge watch 5 hours of Netflix, but we don't, can barely make it through an hour of a Zoom call? Well, obviously there's a reason for that. There's a plot, there's actors, there's lots of, sizzle and that type of thing. But I think therein lies an opportunity for this industry. And I think we should be really relooking and revisiting who we are as an industry in regards to. Um, I love that if Meryl Streep shows up. The if we could create more sizzle, but of course that's a cost issue. So in regards to the costs and that type of thing, I saw someone just said it's costing about 100,000 more to put on an event, and I think that that's a realistic figure from the standpoint of right now, because you're looking at spatial issues, you're looking at technology issues, and you're looking at all the other dynamics that go along with that, lack of sponsorship, lack of revenue in other ways. So I do think that that's something that is to consideration. But I would like to get a show of hands now of how many of you believe that hybrid events will be a forever strategy for your organization. Lots of hands. Yeah, and it's interesting. I was talking to one medical association. They said that they had started to do that a little bit prior to the pandemic, and it actually ended up being a case where they adopted it very quickly because they were able to reach out to cities and locations that would never been able to fly in around the world, and that they've now seen through the pandemic, they've seen a 70% increase in attendance. Obviously, the revenue is not going to match that, but they've seen that come up in regards to the outreach of the education that's out there. So I think that's another very important factor to look at. So I want to pop here really quick. I'm going to go into the chat for a second. There's a question I want to make sure gets answered. So Lisa Simpson, if you don't mind, I'd like to get your input on the comments you made about sponsorship and also your experience related to the hybrid and virtual work you've done, and any tips and tricks that you would wish you had known before you did your first one.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. So we did our annual convention in October completely virtual through the Tilt Group. Their platform is built completely different than anything we had seen before. For those of you that have kids, the best way to describe it is that it's a Fortnite type platform. So it's multiplayer. And we actually had the opportunity to take your avatar head and make it your video screen. So it was your avatar body with your video screen, and we could actually talk one-to-one. What we learned is that, the engagement with exhibitors is still just really hard. It's just not the same for them. From the attendee perspective, they loved it. From the exhibitor perspective, they weren't as thrilled about it. What we're looking at for next year is we talked about hybrid, and our definition of that was that we would have live streaming of some of our events or some of our sessions from multiple rooms on site, so that we'd have our virtual audience who would participate doing questions via online. And we just decided from staff perspective, it took our whole team to run a virtual event. It takes our whole team to run an in-person event. How do we do those at the same exact time if we don't have double the staff and we don't have double the money to outsource it? So we've decided for next year's event to do our in-person event. We've cut our attendance expectations by about 20%. And then the week after, or maybe 2 weeks after, we're going to sort of slice and dice our content and represent it in a way that we can have more of a virtual event, but using the content that we've already had at the live event. So we don't have to hire additional speakers. We're working with our keynotes to allow their presentations to be part of our virtual event after, so that we can expand our audience, reach those folks who have travel bans or don't feel safe. And we're hoping that what it does is gives our exhibitors that in-person experience, but also the virtual opportunity to reach more to get more eyes on their products and services. So that's our plan for now.
Great, thank you. And I'm seeing some other comments coming in that follow the same strategy. So I want to, it's 12:30. We're going to do a quick break for trivia, some fun, then we'll jump back in. I want to continue this hybrid conversation. Then I'm also want to open up about areas that you're looking at regard to social justice as you're moving forward and sharing some ideas around that as well. So I'll turn it back over.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I know everybody's used to seeing Carson, trivia with Carson, but he had a meeting today, so trying to fill in his big shoes today. So we have some fun prizes today. Thank you to Visit Charlotte for donating the prizes today. And the winners of our trivia today are going to have a very cool and unique gift. You're going to get a $50 gift card to Tis Best, which is an organization where you can choose where you would like your $50 to be donated from a group of different charity options. So thank you, Will and Visit Charlotte, for this great donation. And we're going to be doing some holiday themed trivia today. So if you know the answers, write them in the chat window, and then we'll be hearing from today's sponsor, Choose Chicago, Anthony Molina, will be sharing the winners. So here is our first holiday themed trivia question. What is the highest grossing Christmas movie of all time? All right, looks like we have a winner. I'm gonna send that over to Anthony.
All right, Will, this idea is the jam. I'm totally stealing it from you. Anyways, congratulations to Matthew Fox. Matthew Fox is the winner of this first trivia question.
Yes, and the correct answer is Home Alone. Back in 1990, Home Alone brought in $286 million at the box office, making it the most successful holiday movie ever. Congratulations, Matthew. And our next question is, who was the first US president to recognize Hanukkah in the White House? And we have a winner coming to you right now, Anthony.
I love this because I could pick whoever I want and you can't do anything about it. Just kidding.
Hey, fair enough.
Who looks the, no. Congratulations to Marcus Ing. Marcus Ing, you are the winner of trivia question number 2.
Congratulations, Marcus. And the correct answer is Jimmy Carter. He lit the first national menorah in 1979. And actually, Brad and I were just chatting earlier that there was an article about this in the Post over the weekend. So either Marcus, you're really great at trivia, or you had a spoiler over the weekend in the Post. All right, final question. This will be the last Tis Best gift card. What traditional Christmas decoration is actually a parasitic plant? Okay, we have an answer coming your way, Anthony.
All right, there's a reason why Vanna White does not speak too much, but the winner is Kimberly Coer.
Congratulations, Kimberly. The correct
Nice
answer
work.
is mistletoe. Mistletoe is a parasite. It steals water and nutrients from trees. So now you know for your next holiday party. Congratulations to all of our trivia winners. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you for all of our sponsors today. And back to you, Brad.
Thank you. I guess that's another reason not to stand near the mistletoe. So,
especially this year. Keep your distance.
Right, exactly. So I would love to hear, we all jumped into planning, Zoom meetings initially, and then virtual meetings, and now hybrid. And there's a lot of people that made that big jump right off the bat and just jumped in with both feet. I'd love, to hear, tips and tricks, like what, if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done differently when it came to producing and executing a virtual or hybrid meeting? And please, if anyone would like to jump on and talk about it, please do. More breaks, yeah. Actually, I want to go back to So Marcus, I'd like you to talk about I'd like to get your perspective on the speaker side of things. And that seems to be a big topic that comes up multiple times. You can talk about
I
that.
think I think when this all started, there was a mad dash to find the best toy out there, the best platform. But I think what's more important and harder is dealing with your members and your committee and trying to walk them through the process of taking what would normally be a face-to-face meeting into a virtual meeting, which you're compacting it from, let's say, an hour to maybe 40 minutes or less. So, you can find, platforms to broadcast, do polling and trivia. There's all sorts of differences, but there's a lot of commonalities on the platforms. What's not easy to do is, depending on your organization, the politics of your organization, how you build your program, it's hard to take someone that's used to doing maybe a 60-minute panel session live and tell them try this, shorten it. We're not going to do the fluff introductions. We're just going to dive right into it. And it's kind of intimidating telling them you have about a minute online to get these people hooked, or it's not going to work.
No, you bring up a great point. There's an algorithm out there now that says that people are using, they're making decisions within 3 minutes when they come onto an event, whether or not they're going to stay. And a lot of it has to do with the professionalism and what they're looking at, what it even looks like from the standpoint of the speakers. It's interesting. I walked by my husband's office the other day, and I heard a conference going on, and I'm always, of course, I have to go, peek in and see. And I'm not going to say what the name of the organization was, but I was stunned at the caliber of what was happening on screen. The speakers, you had the shooting up the nose, you had the ceiling fans on the head, you had the witness protection program where you couldn't see who the person was because the lighting was horrible. And you think by now, we would have gotten to that place. And I think early on, everything was related to let's get the technology. And there was less time spent on content, and there's less time spent on how it actually looks. And that's going to continue to be a number one priority and evolve. And I'm starting to see more and more content, almost like TED Talk style, much shorter, much crisper. And then obviously you've got to have that engagement. So I think the speaker side, you bring up a great point, is still a huge priority. And it's an area that I find fascinating. And when I work with various organizations on how to elevate that. And John, I love your comment. Talk more about that.
Oh, yeah. So, there was a lot that hit in terms of technology, and there are great, there's a lot out there for different needs, but I think it's important also to know what your needs are. So, I live in the city, I street park, just to go with the car example, it would be really silly for me to buy a Porsche right now that's street parked in the city, and I'll never be able to use it to its first full capability. So I don't need to invest that at that level. I just have a Volkswagen Golf, e-Golf. So it parks, it goes, gets me where I need to. And so it's the efficiency. So it's really scaling, knowing what your needs are, and not overbuying on the platform part, but just making sure that you've got it just right for what your needs are. That makes sense.
Yeah, and actually, I'd love it if we could, the planners, if you could help our CVB DMO building fans here. So I'm hearing more and more, a lot of the advisory board work that I do, that there's a scramble to create studios or to build studios. And some say, well, I don't want a studio. I want to be able to rove. I want to be able to go to multiple locations. I would love to get the feedback from the planners in particular, as you flash forward and think about, the hybrid. You've all agreed that hybrid staying. What do you see that's going to work best for you from a destination in regards to efficiency and cost, and just the overall production quality? What would you like to see? What's your wish list? what I keep hearing more and more is a lot to do around internet, because obviously that is huge as far as the, the quality of it, also the cost of it. What are your thoughts related to studios and having that ability? So Lene, you bring up an interesting question related to why would you have your speakers fly in to sit in the studio? And that's, there's going to be a streaming and virtual aspect to live meetings in the future. So I'm working right now with an organization for 2023, and they're going to have speakers do some live stage. There's also going to be then some talks to the side. They're going to be in a studio. So because there's going to be a tremendous audience that will not be able to make the meeting, or an audience that they're trying to attract. So it's going to be very interesting how we slice and dice this moving forward. I think, a lot of people are going to become, I think we need to move away from certain words like planner and more about producer. And we need to think more about the almost like a TV quality type experiences that need to happen. I mean, we make choices right now. We choose whether or not we're going to go to the football game live or we're going to watch it on television. So I think that that's going to be a big part of who we are as an industry moving forward. So I'd like to move over a little bit to another. I mean, 2020 has brought us so much, and so much in exposing what's always been there. And one of the things that has always been there is social justice issues. And the fact that sometimes people say, oh, it's a movement, a big movement now. It's always been a movement. The challenge that we have now is how to keep the movement going and not make it a moment. And so I'd like to hear from you, what are you and your organizations doing as it relates to this? What are your expectations about destinations in regards to this? And again, anyone that wants to jump on and talk live, please do. Otherwise, throw things into the chat box. Semra, would you be okay talking about that on camera?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
So because our needs were kind of coming from two different places, like we have our existing members that always contribute different ideas, and then we have new members that are starting to get to know who we are. We decided to make kind of like a task force council on one side that would include programming ideas and also just different ways and issues that they saw overall for the association that they would like to see changed into the future. And then we also sent out surveys to different groups to kind of collectively get that information from our existing members on what they're looking for and how they can be, how we can be more inclusive overall. And we're continuing for literally every single program, whether it's, workshops, webinars, things like that, and also our events, to include an aspect of that to be addressed, as there's so many ways to do this and so many different avenues to go down. And we know that, really making sure that everybody's voice is heard and that we're addressing those things is one of the most important parts for us overall, and just including that moving forward. And that's never going to expire. That's a part of our identity now and our culture.
So I'd like to ask, and Vicki, if you, I like your comment. Could you please talk about that as well?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I've been talking to all of my clients, and honestly, they are very interested in looking only at locations and destinations that have seriously put in place a program, a format, a council towards social justice and equality, and that they're implementing it, that it's not strictly so that it's a perception that they're doing something. And so none of my clients are interested in even us looking in the future at any of those that haven't really implemented something strongly and feel committed to that.
Are there any destinations on here that would like to share some of the work they're doing, initiatives, and how they're tackling this? don't know if anyone's on here from Baltimore, but I had recently worked on their customer advisory board.
Hey, Brad, Brian's here.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk a bit about what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So it's still kind of in its infancy stages, but we just had a hybrid cab. It feels like forever ago, but I think it was just last month or a month or two ago. But we're actually that's going to be one of our focus points coming up in the coming cab year cycle, is having a specific subset of our customer advisory board to spearhead the conversations about DE&I and how what Baltimore is doing well, what we can improve on, and how we can implement those the positives and the things that we are working on towards just creating a comprehensive experience for our attendees and our folks coming into town to fully integrate into what we're trying to do in Baltimore.
I think that you bring up an interesting point that also leads into, I'd love to hear from the planner professionals on when it comes to DMOs and CVBs. I've always loved the model. I always, back in my too many years of working and actually booking meetings, that was always my first go-to to really pull together and advocate for me. So I'm a huge proponent. I'm curious, and now we have a lot going on where there's been a lot of shifting and changes in some of the national hotel offices and things of that nature, that I see CVBs stepping in more and more all the time to really advocate on behalf of the city. When you as planners, as you're moving forward, I would love to hear, your expectations of the CVB moving forward, not only on this topic of DEI, but also on, what do you see that role shifting to? What do you expect now from a CVB and a DMO that maybe you didn't 2 years ago? Derek, I'd love it if you could pop on if you can. I like your comment.
Yes. So
please talk about that.
Yeah, so I think we as planners have a responsibility that's uniquely positioned now in this space of inclusion, where it's no longer that we are taking our events to just destinations for the sake of just fit or member driven attendance. We now all have global meetings, whether we like it or not. And so being able to now reach multiple audiences is just a part of our DNA and structure. So as we look at planning and executing in-person experiences specifically, and we are partnering with destinations, it's a part of our now responsibility on the forefront to understand how those destinations are moving forward with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within their cities, within their venues, within their ecosystems. And then for those groups that may not be on the forefront, may not have those policies, procedures in place, or strong initiatives, it's up to us to now bring that to the destination, along with the content, along with the economic impact that our events then have on that destination, but bring something more to strengthen the knowledge and understanding of that community around these issues. Our meetings are no longer just about the content that our subject matter experts push out. They're about impact. And each of us has the responsibility, I think, to now have that as a part of our DNA structure for our events. And things like the HRC Municipality Index, which I threw in the chat, leveraging that to really truly understand how are the destinations doing when it comes to supporting, in this case, LGBTQ plus rights, and what are they doing to empower that community? There are other models out there for other diverse cultures and populations that we need to now include within the RFP process as we reach out to destinations to truly understand what they are doing in this space, so that we can not only provide our participants an opportunity to create and learn in a collaborative way, but we can also then help strengthen those destinations and leave a bigger impact after we leave.
Very, very important, a very important point. Other thoughts related to this, and then any other thoughts that you would like to see as a partner of a CVB? So what I keep hearing when I work with groups is there's a few things. One is that there needs to be more access. Destinations now, are turning more to their communities, the citizens. More and more planners are now looking at the destination to say, okay, yeah, they have great buildings, yeah, they have great hotels. But what's the experience going to be like? What are the people like? And I think, the mask or not mask thing has really put a lot of that on the map, so to speak. I had a conversation recently with a group, and they said, look, it doesn't matter how clean the airplane is. It doesn't matter how great the airport is when we get there, or the protocols in the city. What happens if nobody that lives there is wearing a mask or wants to put on a mask? And, what do I do about that with my attendees? And that's a decision I'm making. So I'm seeing more and more advocacy now related by the cities and the DMOs, more so I think than I've ever seen in my career. And, I'm just curious, from both either the supplier side or the planner side, what has changed for you, and what are your expectations? The CVB, what do you expect from planners, and planners, what are you expecting from CVBs? Wow, stumped you. So I will tell you what I've heard from planners, from all the various ones I've worked with. A lot more advocacy from the standpoint of having more direct access to various officials within the destination, particularly related to maybe some health information, more information on what's going on with pending legislation. More and more CVBs are turning now to the planning community to use them as advocates for what's going on internally. I know Destinations International is working on trying to make a connection with some planners into the Governors Association to start really showing the value of who we are as an industry, and how we, as a collective body, do represent so much of the economic development and impact. Also, I recently had a destination showcase to a board that, this industry, our industry currently, was not one that was attracting new employees as fast as it used to. And now there's more and more between the job loss and the issues around around the job loss that we have. And then there'll be also a big void in intellectual capital that has left the industry. And how do we attract those people moving forward? And it was interesting that one destination said that a lot of people, maybe in some inner city areas, are like, I don't know anyone that looks like me, in the industry. And so planners have been offering to say, look, I'll go in, I'll talk to high schools, I'll talk to junior colleges, I'll talk to anywhere to showcase that, look, you can be an amazing industry and to grow in that. So I want to, continue to push that forward, that there is a tremendous amount of work still to be done in this area, and how we can attract and retain for the future. Glenn, you had a comment?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. In parallel to what Derek was saying a few moments ago about HRC's Municipality Equality Index, I think it behooves us as planners and producers as well to take into account the diversity of the suppliers that we'll work with when we return to hybrid and in-person events. When I was with National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, we were part of the National Business Inclusion Consortium. And that's 10 different organizations that are diversity-based certification organizations. And because NGLCC certified its businesses, we would start there with event producers, floral designers, caterers, et cetera, et cetera. If there wasn't anyone in our database, then we would reach out to our confrères and find out what else there was. So when we start going back out into the real world again, as well as virtual, I mean, with event producers, for instance, keep in mind that there are thousands and thousands of diverse suppliers as well that we can work with, and not just the same groups we worked with before. We're talking about changing the paradigm, but I would encourage everyone to think about that as well as we roll into 2021. Thanks, Brad.
No, of course. And, you know, you bring up a really interesting point. I was talking with the city recently about creating their advisory board, and they put a list of names in front of me. And I said, do you really want a board where everyone looks the same? And I think people are just so used to certain roles or certain organizations, certain titles. And I think it's really important that, you know, we continue to look at, you know, how we can be inclusive, and how if everyone around the table looks like us, then, you know, that's not right. So Anthony, I know you mentioned you had some thoughts related to what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of suppliers and, you know, CVB people can relate to me that we've spent a lot of our time in the past. We're measured by room nights, you know, measured by how many programs that are put in our cities. And I think sometimes we lose that partnership and that ability to really showcase what we have to offer that is more than a hotel room, more than a conference space. And I think the silver lining to what's going on right now is the conversations that I've been able to have with my planner friends are more than just a conference. It's talking about what is what is going on within their association, what is something that they can do outside of planning meetings. And so we're able to talk more about, you know, what's going on in Chicago, what companies are there that can help, you know, with whatever their corporate responsibility or just their mission that is on top of what is going on with their actual meeting. And I think a lot of the things, every city has something in the news that they kind of want to wash over, right? They don't want to like showcase. But in times like this, when you get asked the question, or, you know, like, I'm just going to put it out there with Chicago is, you know, they see crime on TV. So like, oh, we're not going to go there. Well, let's talk more about that. And this is allowing us to have more conversations, because a lot of those neighborhoods on the South Side are gorgeous. And they've got some of the best architecture and some of the nicest people and some of the most diverse restaurants. And so I think that if we spend less time focusing on the number of room nights that we're accumulating and talking more about what the actual city has to offer, then I think we're going to do our part as CVB people to showcase our city, and hopefully planners will do their part of picking a city aside from just a convention center or aside from just a ballroom.
You hit around the head, and I think that is absolutely incredible points, and that's I think what the future is going to be. Is there's going to be a much different perspective on how we're all evaluating what we do and the impact that we have socially. So we are at the top of the hour. We actually have an unplugged session the next 30 minutes where it's just to hang out and talk about anything, not formal. You're happy to stay. If you're going to stay and jump on the next conversation, you know, I love it if you could, you know, at least, you know, be prepared to talk about something, turn on your camera, have some fun. I'm going to bounce this, if John is still on, back to John to kind of tee everybody up and get everybody ready for what's next with the chapter and also with National.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brad. This has been great. It is sometimes most valuable to just have these honest conversations with each other. And that's where we learn a lot, is from each other. That's why I love these events. And thank you so much. What a treat to have you moderate for us today and kind of round out a year. Thank you all so much for coming. And I'm going to hand this back over to Jessica and Leah And we really appreciate everybody participating. Take a look in your email for the trivia. This is going to be a new feature for us to increase engagement in networking, one of those key factors. And then we'll be launching the themes and getting ready for the new year with our chapter reception on January 14th during convening leaders. That's that Tuesday night at 4:30. So you'll see registration opening up for that as well as soon. And we are already well underway for some great programming and content to get us ready for next year and into 22. So thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. And your support this year has been incredible. It's just a really proud moment and an honor to work with all of our volunteers and members. So thank you so much. Leah?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on the reminder about Mix and Quiz, the deadline to register for Monday's event is tomorrow at noon. So even if you don't have a team in place yet, you could just register as an individual and you'll get grouped with somebody. So I think we're ready to unplug, Brad.
All right. Well, that means it's time to pull out the box. No, I'm kidding. And actually, I'm gonna. I have terrible laryngitis, in case anyone didn't realize and know me. So I need to take a swig of my Gatorade for a second. So I know it's very unprofessional for a moderator, but I have to.
No judgment. We want you to keep your voice intact.
I only have 2 more of these today. So love it if we could. This is completely informal. Maybe there was something that didn't come out or didn't get a chance to. I'm going to go back in the chat and look real quick here. But let's keep the dialogue going for those that can and want to. I'd love to hear more about what's going on in your worlds. Oh, you know what? There was one comment that came up, and I don't know, maybe if the planners on here could talk a bit more about this. Someone asked if there is going to be any future relief when it comes to room blocks, to space, to requirements, to minimums, so that type of thing. I don't know how many of you that is continuing to plague you as you look to rebookings or things of that nature. I mean, everything is shifting and changing, but love to hear your perspectives on, where you're seeing some grace, what keeps you up at night related to when it comes to rebooking.
I'd love to toss out several comments that some of my clients have offered and shared. I mean, obviously, most of my clients want a far reduced block in the future and are not interested in reserving what they've done currently, that they don't know when or if they will return to pre-COVID levels. And so they're, very conservative. But I also have clients who literally want to move to a European model where they pay for their rent for their space and they do no room blocks, that people are on their own and that they're grown-ups and adults and they find their own rooms. And, and they don't understand why we have not adopted that yet.
Vicki, it's interesting. I mean, and you and I have been doing this for, 5 or 6 years.
That's a couple zeros. Yeah.
Yeah. Feels like. And that conversation has come up year after year after year. And there's debates and panels and talks about this. But I think the reality of this is more in front of us. I thought it was interesting when Anthony and Tony, you brought up about, the model, rooms equal this and this equals that. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege to have gone to several conferences overseas, particularly in Europe. And, if you're a speaker, you're protected. If you're a board member, you're protected. And if you're anybody else, you get on a train and you ride an hour each day and from a hotel somewhere with 5 rooms. So it's very interesting to see. I think this is a big topic that, as we surge back, which we will, what does this look like? And the obligations. I think, recently I did a panel with Barbara Dunn, and she's talking about contract law and things moving forward and event insurance and all of this. And, all bets are off right now on all of this. And I think this is going to be, once we're healthy and we can do all this again, I think this is going to be the big conversation.
Well, they just don't, it's the way for them to be able to budget.
But Brad, don't you think this will kind of accelerate things that might have happened 10 years into now, maybe 2 or 3 years? I mean, hotels, they rely on forecasting room nights. What happens when you can't forecast room nights anymore?
Right. No, I could not agree with you more. I think everything is up in the air now. It's really interesting. I was trying to think of the disruptors that we've had, and I don't really like that word. I always think disruption is innovation, but let's face it, this has been a disruptive year. And I remember when, oh my God, this thing called the internet happened, and it was going to be the death of third parties, the death of CVBs, everyone going to lose their job, things of that nature. And now we can't even imagine producing events or anything without the internet. I remember hotels.com was the evil lord that was going to destroy the industry. And, so it's very interesting to see, where all this is going to end up in that regard. I think we won't be talking about for years and years. We're going to be talking about the next couple of years, and there'll have to be solutions. Because let's face it, it's all about real estate. It's real estate now. The hospitality industry is the real estate industry.
So I'm kind of curious. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I just want to kind of talk about what Vicky was saying about going to the European model, because I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think at the root of the reason why we don't move to that is probably because the majority of DMOs have some sort of a partnership program with their hotels, and the hotels are demanding some sort of ability to see, that their membership is giving them something and they're counting it as a room night. That's what's important to them. So I think that is one of the reasons why we haven't been able to go to that. And so at the root of that, that's the issue. And in the end, it would have to be something that the DMOs and the hotels could come to agreement on how they would do that. And looking at the attendee and understanding that if you look at the number of attendees that are coming to a conference, they're all going to spend money. If you know how many people are coming from out of town, then they're going to stay somewhere, right? They're not, and I think the percentage of people that stay with friends or other things, that's just a very, very low percentage. So you can still sort of extrapolate from those numbers, but I think that in some ways it would be a lot more helpful to do it that way for a DMO, and then leave the contracting and everything else up to the organization, how they want to do that. But I think in some ways it's, someone has to be the guinea pig and show how it would work. And I just don't, I think that's probably a bigger question for Destinations International.
Agreed.
But I'm also kind of curious about this is continuing on this particular topic is granted, I'm not a planner and I haven't done any meetings over in Europe, but I also wonder is are associations then prepared to pay the price that you pay when you do that in terms of because there's a lot of expectations that associations seem to have in terms of reduce this. I mean, we just talked about how we want free internet, and it's we want those things for free, and there's trying to figure out it's just a matter or not if we can get all parties to shift, because there would be a huge shift in terms of expenses. I mean, Vicky, to your point, it probably would help in terms of budgeting because it would be what it is as opposed to variables, but still it's I think that's a huge shift on the association side.
It's a shift on both sides. I mean, the association would have less risk. They would put out more money in the short term with a rental, but they would have far less risk of having to achieve their attrition. And to be frank with you, in the business model that the Europeans use, the hotels make out better because now they're able to price point their rooms at a going rate, which is similar to what the business traveler would. So they're not discounting some group block. They're doing it based on supply and demand. And so in the end, it actually financially is very beneficial for everyone. It's just that it's such a shift in our mindset that it's just something that we can't seem to get over.
And I think that incentives are paid out based on attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So the incentives are still there. It's just they're not tied to room nights. They're tied to attendance.
Something that I'm thinking about as we're talking about all this is, I wonder, even if it is good for your financial planning and your budgeting, depending on the city that you're going to and the hotels that you think your attendee base might go to, if all the hotels in that city are more big box, are you potentially, you're putting the onus on the attendees to book, but if all the other hotels, and you're using a convention center, let's say, all the other hotels book all their meeting space and book all their rooms, are you potentially screwing yourself by not getting those hotel rooms at those other properties because other in-house business would come? I mean, I think it's very much a industry and a size and a city and a type of meeting you're having, but it's another consideration. Like, yes, I'll pay the X amount of money for the convention center and not have to worry about any attrition or pop-up bills, but it might be, it potentially could be causing a poor attendee experience when they try and book their hotels and try and get to the conference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting. I was kind of flashing back, thinking about various meetings booked overseas. The country would step in and do incentives. You know, you would have, you know, governmental organizations as a country would, like the country of Germany would say, we will give you X amount, you know, and some that incentive. I'm just curious, and I know Will, you're on, but I'm just curious about the incentives. You know, prior to the pandemic, you know, there was a lot of incentives. You know, you had, but there's also a lot of other fees. There's like, you know, commissions here and this and that, and housing fees and all this type of thing, and rebates. So, you know, boom, boom, boom. And then the destinations had incentives. You know, there's going to be a while that, you know, the bank accounts are drained now for a lot of destinations. And, you know, where are these incentive monies going to come from? How is that going to be managed? And, you know, the expectations, you know, for meetings to come back are going to be very high. You know, what pot does this come from? I'm just, you know, maybe there's no answer right now, but.
Well, isn't it the attendees then?
What's that?
Isn't it it shifts to the attendees then, right? And I think if you know, there'll be a shift to that, but I think you have to be careful because, you know, rebates and disclosure and all of that, you can kind of, depending on how big of a financial shift it goes to the attendees, that's a tricky area in terms of fully disclosing, you know, just how this whole event's getting financed.
Well, and Marcus, you know, it's interesting, and I was curious with any of the planners on here, you know, what, you know, if meetings have happened this year, let's say virtually and or hybrid, and, you know, people have been satisfied with it, you know, what are you predicting as planners, you know, as things come back to normal, whatever that, well, I just said a word we're going to say, is attendance going to be the same? I mean, if there's somebody that, I mean, you're going to have attendees that they're going to come that never came before because they can jump on, get the content they want and not have to get on an airplane. But then there are going to be people that are thought, you know what, I've been going to this convention for 10 years. It was good, do I need to go for 5 days out of my life? So I'm just curious, as planners right now, how are you forecasting, what live events will look like? And will you have the same attendance live that you did pre-pandemic?
We're kind of thinking that some of our attendees aren't going to come back. We have a lot of mom and pops and people who, there's 3 people in the company. They can't step away for 5 days to go to a conference. So those are the folks that will be online. We also have some diehards who will be there. I mean, I could have had a meeting yesterday and they would be there, bells and whistles. So I'm thinking attendance will be down some, but I don't think it's going to be drastic, at least in my association's case.
And we're repurposing a lot of our programming overall. So that's why we're kind of doing scenario playing for a hybrid experience, virtual experience versus an in-person experience where we include the awards ceremony, things like that. That's going to be something that you just get a lot more from physically being in a space overall. But we're kind of plotting based on what we've learned doing virtual events this year of what works and why. And same thing, we have a lot of diehard people that will show up now. And then we have those that have travel bans on their firms. And so those are going through majority of next year as well, just to play it safe. So we're having to plot both spaces, and there's a lot of CEOs and high-end leadership as opposed to like coordinator positions and things like that. So that's what we're doing.
I think it's surprised this is a non-answer, but I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's different for every single target group or whatever their association or their corporation is for, their demographic, their budget. And, for the CVBs and for the supplier side, there's not a all-encompassing answer. That doesn't help anyone, but I mean, there probably are studies going on about associations or industries or something, and there's going to be different for every single person. There's no rule of thumb. And I mean, that's what we all learned in 2020. We're all building the plane while we're flying it, and we'll know what it was when it's over. Well,
I kind of feel to a certain extent, whether it's in 2 years, 3 years, attendance levels will get close to, or if not equal to, what we've seen in the past few years. But I think the big change that people need to be prepared for is that next generation of leaders in the organizations that come to your events, whether they feel they want to come or it's worth it.
When you say, Marcus, when you say in a couple of years back to where, is that live or is that a combination of live and hybrid?
Well, I think close to live, because I think, if you think about the leaders in your own association or organization, a lot of them come to these events, not necessarily for education, but they come for networking purposes or other personal reasons. So I think that need will come back once they feel safe, once they have the economy back to be able to do that. But once those leaders start transitioning and giving way to the next generation, that next generation was, my company can't afford to pay for me to go, but I'm going online at half the price or something. So their experience is going to be totally different.
Well, and what about all of those small meetings where some of the really boutique properties count on small retreats, board meetings, that kind of thing, where I don't have any of my clients that have any expectations that they will travel for a board meeting ever again. That the whole idea of getting on a plane for a whole day, going across the country for a 2.5 or 2 day board meeting, and then coming all the way back, they're just like, that's not happening.
Does that go back to Brad's comment with regards to now that people have see that they can do it and they actually said, you know what, the last thing I want to do is jump on a plane and be away for 2 or 3 days, because they've kind of re-looked at their life and they're saying, you know what, it's not worth it. I would much rather be right here in my own home, learning when I want to learn, or, you know, being able to, so I think you're right, Vicki. I think that it's going to be a culmination of, are people really going to want to take those couple days out of their life now?
And those are meetings, Dory, to your point, those are smaller programs that can be done easily. Those don't need a lot of production. They're pretty simple. They can do a board meeting or a retreat at a pretty, you know, unless you want to, you can do that at a pretty low budget kind of scenario. Because it's just, you know, it's in many cases, it's because an organization has to have a board meeting. They have to, by bylaw, have to. So, but yeah, I mean, I think those are going to be the ones that are hit the hardest. That those are pretty much virtual going forward.
Well, and there's a whole trickle effect. I mean, what used to drive the highest profit for hotels and for airlines was that, you know, last minute jump on airplane, business travel type thing. I mean, I was looking at my calendar for 2019, which seems like it was 27 years ago, but, and I looked at all of my trips. I was just trying to calculate how many days I was gone. And there were 14 trips where I flew halfway across the country, one time into another country, for a 1 hour meeting that they wanted me to come in for, to brainstorm and talk about, to talk about the future of a meeting. And I don't think that's ever going to happen again. I mean, I don't see myself, you know, being told like, oh, hey, we need you to fly out here next month for a quick brainstorming meeting. It's going to take you 3 days to go in and out, wine and dine, have a 45 2-hour meeting, drunk, come home. I don't see that happening again. So I think, and that's where the profits for a lot of these places were. I mean, you know, those last minute tickets or those short term tickets and that type of thing. So it's, you know, there's still a major evolution that's going to happen, particularly in the airline industry. So actually, that's a really interesting point, Glenn. I just run talk a little more about that. I just read an article about this a couple of days ago.
As we realize that climate change is a national security issue and not just a rallying cry for a lot of activists, we need to, what you just said about flying halfway across the country for a 1 hour meeting, that's a huge carbon footprint. Did the client, you know, pay any carbon offset fees? Did they have trees planted or anything? Those are things that we all need to take. We need to take into account now. I mean, you look at a lot of dystopian television or science fiction, The Expanse, for instance. Manhattan's underwater. It has a wall built around it, and those are things that we have to take into account. I mean, the joke about having beachfront property in, you know, the Appalachians is something we may be looking at in 100 years. So we need to take into account, how can we, and I think we're all learning this over the past 7-8 months, how do we as producers and planners think smarter about what we do? The producers have learned how to do things smarter. A home studio, the right light or not the right light. How do we make this make sense, still deliver content, still engage people, still educate people, but do it taking into account our one home? We have one chance for this. So that's my soapbox, but I think it makes sense for all of us to think about that more.
No, I think you have a great point. I think there's going to be a lot of considerations for that moving forward. So let's end on a happy note. When we're all able to get back out there, I'm curious, like, what's the first place people, and this is just you as a person, not your business, nothing. And if money was no object, where in the heck are you going to go when you're allowed to go? Yeah, Josie. Josie, go ahead.
I'm trying to unmute myself. I thought I could hit my space bar. I have not been on an airplane since March, and I know, it will affect, Glenn, as you said, the carbon footprint, but I'm really looking forward to getting on an airplane. I think the first thing I would do is go to San Diego where my sons are. And it's a personal thing. So it's not business, but that would be the first thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to see a freaking Broadway play. That's what I want to do. Oh my God. I just want to get back to a theater. I mean, it's all fun watching that stuff on TV, but it's not the same. We watched The Prom last night and it was so good. But I said to my husband, there's a scene where they're all inside a theater in Broadway. I'm like, remember we used to do that? We'll do it again. I see a lot of Italy. I think Italy's going to be popular. Well, everyone, my voice is going, and I just want to say, first of all, it's really wonderful to see everybody. What a hell of a year. And, we'll all come out of it different. A lot of ways, as I said, the silver lining will come out better in some ways. And I do hope that any of you that are on this call right now that are furloughed or looking, that grace comes your way and the right thing comes your way. I know some of you have found some really cool, amazing things that have obviously tapped who you are. I'm seeing lots of food being made. I've seen some candles being made, and I love it. I just love it. So this has been, for me, probably one of the more fun ones I've done in a while. And I want to thank all of you for your participation. And if the committee could stay back with me for a second, I would love that. But unless anyone else has anything to say, I think we're going to plug it back in and call it a wrap. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Brad.
It's a pleasure.